text is an excerpt of a famous speech given by US President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. We'll call him JFK. He said this speech in May 1961. The title of the speech, The Decision to Go to the Moon, should give you a clear indication of the subject matter of the speech. It is very important to remember when we are looking at this text, it is meant to be spoken or listened to. And as a result, we'll see some stylistic features that are specific to speeches. Before we start, let's have a look at our learning goals: to explore the context of a text for deeper understanding, and to examine the language, forms, and features of spoken texts. Before we examine a text like this, it is important to understand the context, or the background of the text, and what's going on in the world that might influence the text. The 1960s was a very interesting period in history, which saw a large portion of the world divided into two groups. One group supporting the USA and the other the USSR, currently known as Russia. Both groups had a firm distrust of each other and disagreed on how a country should run. You may have heard of terms like communism and capitalism. When JFK refers to outer space, as you can see, being peaceful as yet, highlighted in yellow, he is referencing the division in the world and the wars or conflicts that have erupted as a result. You may have heard of the Korean War, Cuba, or Berlin. When JFK refers to the others too, also highlighted in yellow, he is firmly stating that he will win all the current conflicts with the USSR. Very strong words to say at the time, and interesting that references to conflicts are evident both at the first and second paragraph of our excerpt. So let's have a read of the speech. The Decision to Go to the Moon, J.F. Kennedy, May 1961. There is no strife, no prejudice, no national conflict in outer space as yet. Its hazards are hostile to us all. Its conquest deserves the best of all mankind, and its opportunity for peaceful cooperation may never come again. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too. The message of the speech is about taking on a challenge, sticking to it, and ultimately triumphing. Kennedy says that no matter how hard getting to the moon becomes, the USA will get there in the end. Exactly why the USA needs to go to the moon in the 1960s is explained as Kennedy says, they are choosing the task because it is hard. That's an interesting concept. This is where knowing the context, the background, what is going on at the time is important. The rivalry or division between the USSR and the USA is at play here. The USSR was the first country to launch a satellite called Sputnik into space, and they did that in 1957. And in April 1961, only a month before Kennedy gives this speech, the USSR launched a cosmonaut, or we call them astronauts, Yuri Gagarin, into space as the first person ever to circle the Earth. It was clear at this point that the USA was losing the space race. Being the first on the moon became essential to the USA to combat their rivals, the USSR. So hopefully you can see that understanding the context of a text, who wrote it and why, what's going on in the world, etc., is very important, and just as important as language and structural devices. Without context, there is no deep understanding. If we go back to the structure of the speech, our excerpt is in two short paragraphs. Remember, this is not the whole speech. Repetition, usually in threes, is an effective technique used in speeches, and we can see examples of this in the first line of the poem, with the repetition of the words no. I've underlined them for you. This places emphasis on the words strife, prejudice, and conflict, summing up the world in which Kennedy is reaching beyond. Repetition is a persuasive strategy, and repetition in this form increases the intensity of the speech, becoming highly emotional. We need to, as an audience, sit up and listen to what Kennedy is about to say. You might want to think about using this technique in your speeches. Alliteration, hazards are hostile, highlighted in aqua, is purely used in this speech to create rhythm. Remember, speeches are spoken texts. The rhythm or sense of movement of a speech is created by the use of language and stylistic features. And it is very important to pay attention to punctuation, for example, to know when to pause for dramatic emphasis. Getting the timing or rhythm of a speech is essential. Practicing your speech and working on pacing is an important step to get ready for any presentation. Rhetorical questions are also an excellent way to get your audience to engage with your speech. The use of 5 rhetorical questions, highlighted in purple, provide opportunities for the audience to stop and think about the ideas being presented. The repetition of rhetorical questions is how Kennedy is leading the audience to move their thinking and guarantee they agree with him. We've already climbed the highest mountain, etc., so it's only logical we go to the moon. The emotionally charged repetition of the term we in the second paragraph, highlighted in green, is Kennedy's way of including the audience, the American people, into the decision. It is no longer Kennedy's idea. It belongs to everyone, as we, the first person plural, unifies the audience and the speaker, further persuading the audience to agree with Kennedy's ideas. Using rhetorical questions and unifying yourself as a speaker with the audience are both simple yet effective techniques you can use in your own speeches. Hopefully, you've learned something today about the importance of context. No speech stands alone. Nothing is by itself. It always belongs to a period, a person, a movement. This speech is historical. It was said at a very important moment in time when the world was undergoing something we call the Cold War. If you're interested in the Cold War, there are plenty of documentaries to watch. What's important to take away from this, though, guys, is that each and every one of you is capable of using these techniques to create an awesome speech. Good luck, guys.